The girl in the dust. The sun was cruel in the sky. Dry wind moved across the rocky desert like a whisper of death. Dust danced in the air, hot and sharp. The planet was silent, except for the soft, broken breathing of a girl. She was not human. Thin, weak and covered in cuts, the alien girl lay face down in the dirt. Her silver skin was dry. Her white hair stuck to her cracked lips. She had no shoes, no food, no water. Her body shook with every breath. Her eyes, glowing faint blue, opened slowly. She had escaped last night, from the cages, from the pain, but she didn't know where she was going. She only knew she had to keep running. Her people had thrown her away like trash. She was nothing to them now. Just a burden, just a waste. Now she was lost, dying. Then, a shadow. Heavy boots crunched on the stone. She didn't look up. Maybe it was a beast. Maybe it was her death. She didn't care anymore. But the boots stopped. She felt something cold and metal touch her lips. A canister. Water. The girl flinched. Her tired mind screamed trap, poison, control. But her throat burned worse than her fear. She drank. The water felt like life itself. She drank until she choked and coughed, then drank again. A soft voice spoke in a language she didn't know. The shadow moved. She tried to sit up but couldn't. Her head dropped. Her vision blurred. The human knelt beside her. His skin was tanned by the sun, arms strong, clothes dusty. He looked like a traveler, not a soldier. A bandana covered his head, a blade at his belt. He said nothing more, just stood and walked to the rocks nearby. The girl blinked, confused. Why didn't he kill her? Why didn't he leave? He started stacking rocks, slowly, one by one. She watched, from the ground, too weak to move as he lifted stone after stone and built a small wall. Not a perfect wall, not even straight. But it grew. Shade appeared. A roof followed. It was crude, but it was something. Shelter. Her mouth moved without sound. She didn't understand. Why would anyone help her? Hours passed. The human worked. She slept. When she woke, there was food beside her. Not much, just half a protein bar. But it was enough to make her stomach ache. She ate slowly, eyes never leaving the strange man. He didn't ask questions, didn't touch her, didn't demand anything. He just built. By sunset, the tiny shelter had a roof made of stone, dry leaves, and broken metal pieces. It wasn't safe from a storm, but it would keep out the cold desert wind. She crawled inside, her body sore and shivering. She curled up in the corner. The man sat outside, sharpening his blade. They didn't speak, but something strange was happening in her heart, something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. She fell asleep, with her eyes open, staring at him through the cracks in the wall. Later that night, a sound woke her. Scrape. 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 She held her breath. Not wind. Not animal. Something else. She looked toward the door. The man was gone. Panic hit her chest. Had he left her here alone? Had he? A scream echoed from outside. Not human. Something alien. She crawled to the door and peeked out. Moonlight lit the desert. Two figures stood on the hill above. Tall, armored, deadly. Her heart stopped. She knew those shapes. Enforcers. Her people had found her. But why were they here? And where was the human? She looked around quickly. No sign of him, no footsteps, just wind and dust. She backed into the shadows, afraid. Then something moved behind the enforcers. A large rock flew through the air. Crash. One enforcer went down. The second turned just as the human charged from the darkness. A shout. A struggle. Dust flew. Bones cracked. She watched in shock as the man fought, alone, against two armored soldiers from another world. He fought like a beast. like a storm, and, she realized, he wasn't just helping her. He was protecting her, even though he didn't know her name, even though she was an alien, even though he had no reason to care. He fought anyway. And in that moment, something deep inside her changed. She was no longer alone. He builds, she watches. Morning came slow. The alien girl woke to the sound of hammering, soft thuds echoing across the rocks like a heartbeat. Her body ached, but she could move now. She sat up under the rough stone roof and peeked outside. He was still here. The human. He hadn't left her. He hadn't run. He was building again. His hands were dirty, covered in small cuts. Sweat rolled down his neck as he lifted another flat rock and carefully fitted into a growing wall. Around him were piles of stones, sticks, even a metal panel he'd dragged from the wreck of an old escape pod. He was turning this empty place into a home. She didn't understand him. Not his words, not his ways, but her eyes never left him. From behind the shelter wall, she watched as he carved a trench into the earth. He poured water into it, tested it, then filled it with long green roots he'd found. The roots would cool the shelter. He showed her by gesture, pointing to the sun, then to his wet shirt, then to the trench. She just stared. Why would a man build a garden for someone like her? She touched her necklace, the old chain her captors had once used to bind her. Now it was broken and empty. For the first time, it didn't feel heavy. She followed him from a distance that day, curious, nervous. He didn't speak. He just worked. She noticed how he moved, slow, smart, careful. He would stop often and listen to the wind. Sometimes he'd look at her and nod as if saying, "You're safe." When he hunted, he showed her how. Small traps with stones and vines. He caught a desert crawler, ugly thing, but rich in protein. He cooked it over fire, broke it in half, and gave her the better piece. She hesitated, sniffed it, then ate. The taste was bitter. The silence between them was not. That night she surprised herself. She helped him, not with words, but with actions. She carried stones in her small arms, passed him tools, held up pieces of broken metal while he tied them to the roof with cord. It felt strange, not being ordered, not being used, just helping. And when the fire was lit and the stars began to shine across the black sky, she sat beside him. Not close, but not far. The human stared at the fire, quiet and calm. She watched him. His face had lines like he'd lived many hard days, but his eyes were soft, kind, and in the firelight he looked almost like a story, the kind told to children of warriors who protect instead of destroy. Suddenly, he spoke. She didn't understand the words, but the way he said them, low, thoughtful, felt like music. He pointed to the stars, made a motion with his hands like a ship flying. Then he pointed to her, then back to the stars, then touched his own chest, and shrugged. A question, was he asking where she came from, or maybe why she stayed? She didn't answer. She just looked, down at her hands, alien, weak, not made for this world, but she stayed. Later, while the human slept, she sat alone by the fire. Something moved in the distance. She turned sharply. Eyes narrow. Her people? No, not yet, just wind. But she felt something, a presence, watching. She picked up a sharp stone. If anyone came for him, she wouldn't run, not again. The next day, he built more. A second wall. A rain collector. A smoke vent. She helped him without waiting to be asked. When he smiled at her, something in her chest warmed. No one had smiled at her in years, not since she was taken. She didn't even remember what her real name sounded like. But this human, he didn't ask for her past. He just treated her like she mattered. That evening, as the stars returned, he gave her something small, a smooth rock, flat, warm from his pocket. On it, he had carved a symbol, a circle, and inside it, 2 small dots. She didn't know what it meant, but she held it close, because it was the first gift anyone had ever given her without chains attached, and far, far above them. A ship entered orbit. Its scanners locked onto 2 heat signatures, and the hunt began again. Visitors from her past. The sky was too quiet. The human felt it first, standing still, one hand resting on his knife. The wind had shifted. Even the bugs had stopped making noise. He looked toward the horizon, squinting into the heat waves. The girl noticed his stillness. She stopped stacking stones and followed his gaze. At first there was nothing. Then, a sound. Low. Metallic. Vroom! She froze. Her chest tightened. Her hands shook. She knew that sound. Dropships. The human looked at her. She backed away, eyes wide. Her lips moved silently. No, no, no. The memory hit her like a storm. Years ago. Her home. Her people. That same sound had come before pain, before the collar, before the prison. Now it had come again. The ship landed far off, beyond the cliffs, but close enough for dust to rise in a storm of fire. The girl's legs wanted to run. Her mind screamed, "Hide!" But the human put a hand on her shoulder. Firm. Steady. He pointed to the shelter. She nodded. Then he picked up his blade and walked toward the cliffs. Alone. The enforcers arrived with silent feet and armored boots. 2 of them. Tall. Strong. Faster than before. Their armor shimmered with high-tech plating glowing with red lines. Their eyes were hidden behind black helmets. Their voices, cold and sharp, spoke in her language. Target found. Alive. The girl hid behind a rock wall, heart pounding. They knew she was here. They had come for her. One of them walked to the shelter, stepped inside, and laughed. She sleeps in dirt like an animal. The other scanned the area. Another heat source. Human. The first one snorted. Let him try. That's when the rock hit. Crack. A massive boulder smashed into the enforcer's back, sending him flying into the side of the shelter. The second one turned instantly, but too late. The human charged, no armor, no gun, just speed and fury. He slammed his shoulder into the second enforcer, grabbed the creature's wrist, twisted hard, then smashed his elbow into the helmet. Metal cracked. The enforcer roared and punched back. The human flew back into a wall, blood from his mouth. But he stood again and smiled. The girl had never seen anyone fight like this. Her people trained for war. But this was survival. This was personal. The first enforcer stood, stunned, dented. The human ducked under a swing, grabbed a rock the size of a skull and rammed it into the enforcer's chest plate. Clang. Sparks flew. The girl screamed as the second one drew a plasma blade and lunged. The human dodged, but barely. The blade sliced his arm. He grunted, breathing heavy, then grabbed a chain from the ground. The girl's old collar. He wrapped it around the enforcer's blade arm and pulled. Hard. The alien screamed. The girl didn't think. She moved. She grabbed a spear the human had made from bone and scrap. She ran into the fight, heart racing, arms trembling. The human looked at her, surprised, but didn't stop her. They fought together, 2 against 2, stone and scrap against tech and armor. She dodged a blast, leapt onto the back of an enforcer, and stabbed with all her strength. The spear cracked, but it pierced. The enforcer fell, one left. The human tackled the last one and pounded again and again until the helmet shattered. It was over. The desert was silent. The girl fell to her knees, shaking, blood on her face. Not hers. The human walked over, breathing hard, and sat beside her. He didn't speak. He just looked at her, like he was seeing her for the first time. She looked back, and for the first time, she didn't feel like a ghost. She felt alive. But something beeped. She turned to the fallen enforcer. A red light blinked on his wrist. The human noticed too. Tracker. Backup was coming. He stood and walked to the shelter. Inside, he picked up a bag. Then he looked at her, pointed to the mountains, time to move. She nodded. She didn't know where they were going, but wherever it was, she would follow. One boulder, two bodies. The stars faded. The sun was rising again, but peace did not return with the light. The human and the alien girl stood high on a rocky ledge, looking back at the broken shelter they had once called home. Smoke still curled from the smashed stone walls. Two bodies lay in the dust below, armored, silent. The girl stared at them, eyes unreadable. These were her own kind. Not friends, not family, just ghosts from a past that never let her go. Beside her, the human tightened the strap on his wounded arm. Blood had dried into a dark red trail down his elbow. His shirt was torn, but his eyes were sharp. He was thinking, planning. He didn't panic. He never did. Below them, the desert stretched endlessly. But danger wasn't behind them anymore. It was above. The human pointed at the blinking red tracker still strapped to the alien corpse's wrist. The girl knelt beside it, examined it. It pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. She looked up, concerned. "They'll come," she said in a soft voice. The human nodded. He already knew, but he wasn't afraid. Instead, he walked to the edge of the cliff and began lifting another boulder. This one was even bigger. The girl didn't understand. "Why are you doing this?" she asked in broken English. He looked over his shoulder and gave a small smile. "Because I build things, not just shelters." He pointed to the cliff edge, where he had begun rolling small stones into place, like markers, shaping a narrow path up toward the ridge. A path that could be walked or trapped. The girl tilted her head. Then she understood. He wasn't just building now, he was preparing to fight again. But this time, smarter. For hours, they worked. No food, no talking, just quiet movement. They turned the ridge into a trap, a fortress of stone and dust. Ropes, weak ledges, deadfall paths. The human had learned to survive in wild places long before she ever met him, and now, she was learning too. By nightfall, they rested under a rocky overhang. The stars blinked above, silent. The girl watched him silently, then asked, "Why not leave? Why not run far?" He didn't answer right away. He took a stone and drew in the dirt, a square, then a roof, then two small dots inside. She looked at it. A house. She touched the drawing. "Family?" she guessed. He nodded. She pointed to herself. "I'm not your family." He paused, then looked her dead in the eyes. "You are now." In the middle of the night, a light appeared in the sky, not a star. A ship, fast, black, bigger than the blast. It screamed through the air and dropped two more enforcers into the canyons. The hunt had resumed. The human didn't sleep. He stood watch, blade in hand, waiting for the ground to tremble. And tremble, it did. Footsteps, loud and echoing, climbed the stone path, but the human was ready. He stepped into the open. One of the enforcers spotted him and raised a plasma rifle. Too slow. Boom! The boulder rolled from the ledge, straight down. It crushed the rifle wielder, pinning him against the rocks. Dust exploded. The second enforcer ran forward, screaming in fury. The human didn't run. He stepped forward with the chain he'd tied into a loop. The two clashed in a blur of dust and motion. The alien swung with speed, but the human was smarter. He used the terrain, dodged, let the creature slip near the cliff edge, then wrapped the chain around its leg, pulled, one step too far. The enforcer fell. The sound of his body hitting the rocks echoed across the desert. Silence followed. The girl ran forward, heart racing. He stood there, breathing, hard, shirt torn, eyes wild. She ran to him, arms out, not knowing what to do. He let her hug him, and for the first time, he hugged back. That night, they burned the tracker. No more signals, no more chases, just two bodies, two survivors, two souls building something new on a planet that had forgotten them both. The fire and the bond. The fire was small but warm. It crackled gently between them as night wrapped the desert in a cold, quiet blanket. Wind blew across the rocks, howling softly like a spirit searching for a place to belong. But here, beside this fire, under a rough shelter of stone and scrap, two souls had found one. The human sat with his back against the wall, arm still bandaged from the last fight. His face was lit by flame. Tired, bruised but not broken. Never broken. Across from him, the alien girl sat cross-legged, hugging her knees to her chest. She was no longer shaking, no longer afraid of him. The silence between them now was peaceful, not empty. She held something in her hand. It was the flat stone he'd carved earlier, the circle and two dots. She had kept it hidden in her pouch this whole time. Tonight she finally showed it to him. He looked at it, then at her and smiled. "You kept it." She nodded. "I didn't know what it meant," she said slowly, "but it felt safe." He pointed to the dots. "Us," then to the circle. "Home." She blinked, eyes soft. "We're home?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. That night, for the first time, she spoke more than one sentence. In broken English, mixed with words from her own tongue, she told him stories, not happy ones. Memories of cages, of electric walls, of screaming, machines that scanned her blood, measured her value, marked her defective. Her kind had no place for weakness. She was too thin, too slow, too curious. They called her a waste of breath. One day they simply stopped feeding her, so she escaped and kept running until she collapsed in his desert, until he found her. The human listened without a word. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out a metal flask. Not water this time, just sweet tea concentrate, warm and strong. He poured a bit into a stone cup and handed it to her. She sipped it. Her lips twitched. It was bitter, but good. It was the first thing in her life made for comfort. She looked at him. "You fight, but also, you care." He shrugged. "Both are needed." "Why?" He looked into the fire, then said quietly, "Because no one did that for me." The girl sat in silence. She wanted to say something deep, something real, but she didn't know the words. So instead, she stood, walked over to him, and sat beside him. Close, her shoulder touched his. She waited for him to move away. He didn't. He just leaned his head back against the wall and sighed. For the first time since she was born, she felt warm not just on the outside, but inside. They sat like that for a long time. No talking, just the crackle of the fire, the wind outside, and two hearts learning the same rhythm. Later, the human showed her something strange. He unwrapped a small silver object from cloth, a tiny cube scratched but glowing faint blue. She leaned in, curious. He pressed aside. A hologram appeared. A woman, human, smiling. A small child beside her, laughing. His family? She looked at him. His face didn't change, but his eyes dimmed. "Gone," he said simply. "War left me with this, and a lot of silence." The girl placed her hand over the cube. "I'm sorry." He nodded, then gently closed the cube and put it away. Before they slept, she placed her stone beside his bag, right next to the cube. She didn't say anything, but her meaning was clear. We both lost something, but maybe we found something too. Far in the sky, satellites spun quietly, scanning the desert. No movement, no signals, no more heat signatures from alien trackers. For now, they were safe. But the world was still watching, and something darker was coming. Inside the shelter, the human and the alien girl slept close, the fire dying between them. They didn't dream of pain that night, only of stone houses, and 2 dots inside a circle. The siege begins. The peace didn't last. It never does in stories like this. One morning, as the desert wind blew soft and quiet, a strange shadow passed across the stones. The girl looked up, her breath catching in her throat. It was not a bird, not a cloud. It was a warship, twice the size of the last. Black, silent, watching. She grabbed the human's arm, eyes wide with warning. He followed her gaze, and for a moment, just a heartbeat, his jaw tensed. "They found us again," she whispered. He nodded, and without another word, he began preparing. They didn't run. Not this time. They fortified. The girl helped without being told. She knew how now. She dug trenches, sharpened sticks, set up tripwires using vines and scrap. The human marked high ground points and laid boulders above narrow passes. He hid firebombs and dried out bushes. They smeared dust over the shelter's stone to blend it into the land. It wasn't just survival anymore. It was their land now, their home, and they weren't giving it up. That night, the girl asked, "Do you think we'll survive?" The human didn't answer at first, then he smiled. "We built a house from dust," he said. "Now we build war from the same." She laughed, soft, unsure. But she held a spear tighter, because she believed him. The warship didn't land this time. It dropped pods, 6 of them. They slammed into the earth like thunder. From each pod stepped an elite enforcer, sleeker, deadlier, upgraded. But one stood taller than the rest. His armor glowed with gold lines. His face was uncovered, sharp jaw, blue eyes, familiar. The girl gasped, her legs gave out. She fell to her knees, shaking. The human caught her before she hit the dirt. She pointed, trembling. "That's my brother." The human didn't speak. He just watched the tall alien walk forward, eyes scanning the rocks like a hunter. The brother raised his voice. "Little sister," he shouted in alien tongue, "you've caused a lot of trouble." The girl swallowed hard. The human stood beside her, silent. The brother continued, "Come home. I'll erase your record. You'll be safe. I'll protect you." She stepped forward, fists clenched. "Safe?" she shouted back. "You called me a curse. You left me in a lab cage." His eyes narrowed. "I didn't kill you. That was mercy." The girl's voice broke. "I don't want your mercy. I want my life." The brother nodded slowly. "Then I will take back what you stole." He raised his hand. 6 enforcers advanced. The human whispered, "Now." They triggered the traps. Stones exploded. Dust clouds burst into the air. One enforcer fell into a spike pit. Another tripped a wire and was hit by a flaming barrel. The desert became chaos. The human ran toward the cliff line, dodging blasts. He grabbed a hidden rope and swung onto a ledge. The girl ducked behind boulders, threw firebombs into narrow passes. She moved like wind, fast, focused. 2 enforcers gave chase. She led them into a crevice filled with dried oil, then lit it. Behind her, boom! They vanished in fire, but the brother didn't move. He walked calmly forward, blaster in one hand, her name on his lips. "You don't belong with him," he said, voice quiet now. "He's a broken creature, a human, weak." She stepped between them, chest heaving, eyes full of fire. "He's stronger than you." The brother's face twisted. "He builds houses from rock." She raised her chin. "And from love." The brother raised his blaster, but the human dropped, from above. He slammed into him with a roar, blade flashing. The 2 crashed into the ground in a cloud of dust and fury. The girl ran to them, watching as they fought. Brother versus protector, one for blood, one for bond. She didn't know who would win, but she knew who she was fighting for. Blood or bond. The ground shook. Dust flew into the air as the human slammed into the alien commander, her brother. They crashed down hard, rolling across the rocks, fists swinging, blades scraping metal. Sparks lit the sky as armor cracked and blood was spilled. The girl froze. For a heartbeat, she saw two lives. One was blood, the other was bond. Her brother punched hard. The human staggered back, blood dripping from his nose. The alien commander stood tall, eyes blazing with fury. "You, protect her," he growled, "but she's not yours." "She is now," the human said through his teeth. Her brother charged. The girl ran. She didn't know what she'd do, just that she couldn't watch them destroy each other. She screamed, "Stop!" Both froze. The human, panting, holding a cracked blade, her brother standing firm, blaster in hand. She stepped between them, arms out. "Enough," she said. "I choose." Her brother's eyes burned. "Choose? You're my blood, my family." She shook her head. "You left me in a cage. He built me a home. You're one of us." "No," she whispered. "I was never yours." The silence cut, deeper than the blade. Her brother's face twisted with something like pain, then hate. "You are no sister of mine." He raised the blaster, but before he could fire, the human moved. Fast. He didn't block the shot. He took it, right in the side. "The," girl screamed. The human fell. Her brother stood in shock. He hadn't meant to shoot him. Not really. Not like that. The girl dropped to her knees beside the human, hands shaking as she pressed against the wound. Blood soaked his side. He smiled, barely conscious. "Still here?" he said weakly. Tears filled her eyes. She looked up at her brother, voice shaking with rage. "This is what real strength looks like." He didn't respond. For the first time, he looked unsure. She stood slowly, picking up the human's blade. Pointed it at her own brother. "Leave, or I'll finish what he started." For a long moment, no one breathed. Then, the commander stepped back, looked at her, then at the man bleeding on the ground, then turned away. He raised a beacon, activated it, and vanished in a flash of red light. Gone. The girl dropped the blade and dropped to her knees again. The human was still breathing, but weak. She held him close, whispered words in her language, soft, warm, shaking. "You're not allowed to die." He smiled faintly. "You gave me something to live for." Hours passed. She treated the wound, cleaned it with desert herbs, sealed it with heat. He slept. She kept watch. No more ships came. No more shadows. Just quiet. Days passed. The human healed, slowly. The girl never left his side. They rebuilt the shelter again, together, this time stronger. They planted roots, real ones. Flowers bloomed in the dry sand. One night, under the stars, she took the old stone he had carved, the circle and 2 dots, and carved something beside it, a 3rd dot. He looked at her. She smiled. "You and me," she said softly. "But now, we add one more." He blinked, then smiled wide. "Family?" She nodded. "A real one. Not by blood, but by choice, by bond." And far away, in the void of stars, other eyes watched, but none dared touch the land again. Because everyone knew, on that forgotten world, where rocks were homes and hearts were shields, a human had once thrown a boulder and changed a life forever.